And as the guys are departing, obviously just a reminder, if you are on social media in relation to anything that is being discussed, the hashtag is #FutureTrials. For the sake of efficiency and alacrity, what we are going to do is move immediately to our next speaker. So if you do need to go for a coffee or a bathroom break, if you could do it quietly, because we're going to try to keep everybody in the room, because there's not that long until we're actually going to be in our lunch. It's only about 45 minutes away. Our next speaker is Professor of Health Research Methodology and Deputy Dean of the College of Medicine, Nursing and Health Sciences at the University of Galway. Will you please welcome Professor Declan Devane. Where are you, Declan? Did anybody see Professor Declan Devane? There he is. While you're walking up, I'll just confirm, you are actually a professor. He hasn't argued, we'll take that as a yes. Declan, over to you. Sorry for dragging you all the way from the back.
I was under the impression I was told we had a coffee break now. That's one of the other illusions, Anton. So I just have a few minutes, and I know people are gagging for coffee. So my name is Declan Devane, and I'm thrilled to be here today as we embark on a new journey with the launch of our Institute for Clinical Trials at the University of Galway. This isn't just, as you've heard today, an academic endeavour, but it's a commitment to the health and well-being of our community, our nation, and beyond. I think it's clear that from the speakers we've heard over the past 2 days, that our institute is poised to bring a significant shift in the clinical research landscape in Ireland and beyond. And we're not just talking about conducting clinical trials. We're talking about a comprehensive end-to-end programme that takes an idea or a problem in health, nurtures it through the rigours of research, and brings it to fruition as a tangible improvement in the care of people accessing our health services. You've heard that the vision over the next 3 years is ambitious, yet it's grounded. We do aim, and no apologies, to shine brightly as a beacon of impactful clinical research, fostering partnerships, and as Peter and Martin have said, most importantly, with our patient and public partners, and delivering excellence. We will harness our collective expertise and streamline our processes to support our researchers and enhance the efficiency of trials. And those of us who work in clinical trials will know that any efficiency that we can bring to how we plan, do, and share the findings of clinical trials will be very, very welcomed. But our focus isn't just on the science. We're equally committed to the human element. We'll champion meaningful equality, diversity, and inclusion in clinical trials and ensure that our trials are informed by a broad church of the community whom we serve. And that's both from those who are conducting clinical trials and those who are participating in it. What really excites me personally about the Institute is the holistic approach we've taken to what clinical trials are. So we're not just talking about generating new knowledge about the effectiveness of healthcare interventions, be that medicines, be that behavioural interventions, or complex social care interventions. We're committed to the entire journey of a trial, from identifying and prioritising the problems that the trials are trying to address, to identifying the questions that matter most, through the design, conduct, analysis of trials, to the applications of our findings in real-world settings. So we are dedicated, and we must be dedicated, to ensuring that our research doesn't just end up in academic journals or the findings on shelves, but actually makes a real-world difference to our healthcare policy and practice. Like many others, I too, at this stage, want to acknowledge the tireless efforts of the College and the University, and in particular to our Dean, Martin O'Donnell, and to Martina Coolahan, the Director of Strategic Planning in our college. Their dedication and commitment has genuinely been instrumental in shaping the vision and direction of the Institute. Like others again, a special mention must go to Peter, the Institute Director, and I'm privileged to say a good friend. His vision, underpinned by a work ethic that focuses on improving patients' lives and valuing people, is the driving force behind today's launch. So just to conclude, we're building an institute that embodies excellence, that responds to the needs of our community, and is committed to making a positive impact on our patients and society. And that is what we will be judged on as the years go by. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Declan. And sorry for startling you away from the coffee. Now, we were talking about it earlier on. We're going to look at cancer care and the implications of clinical research on that both improvement of and delivery of cancer care. We are going to be hearing from the newly appointed clinical lead for the Clinical Research Facility Galway and consultant surgeon at Aoife University Healthcare Group. Please welcome Professor Aoife Lowery.
Good morning and thank you. I'm delighted to be here today to talk about a cancer trials programme in the context of our future trials strategy. What we are launching over these 2 days is an institute for clinical trials with an ambition to undertake research that's impactful, inclusive, driven by need and committed to enhancing global health. And a cancer trial programme is an essential and integral element of this strategy. Why cancer trials? Well, the reason is that cancer is one of the biggest healthcare issues facing our population nationally and internationally at present. All of us in this room will be affected by cancer in one way or another. And you can see here that in Ireland, it's a particular issue, as the most recent data from the European Cancer Inequalities Registry has identified that Ireland's cancer rate is 26% higher than the EU average. This is a huge societal and economic burden, and it's set to actually get worse because we have an ageing population, and the data shows that the percentage increase in cancer incidence in Ireland is going to be higher than anywhere else in Europe by 2040. These are worrying trends, and in order to counteract them, we need to have early cancer detection, better cancer prevention, and evidence-informed cancer care policies. And as was so impactfully outlined by Noreen Doyle earlier on, this is all going to be contingent on effective cancer clinical trials. So what we want from a future-facing cancer trials programme is one that will be operationally efficient, will deliver on scientific and clinical impact, and above all, will deliver value to our patients. And there's a number of key enablers in order to achieve this, which I'm going to discuss over the next few slides. We heard a lot yesterday about efficient and innovative trial design. And the trial designs that are particularly pertinent to cancer research are adaptive trials that can respond dynamically to changes in the therapeutic landscape during the course of a trial. Window trials give us the opportunity to interrogate and evaluate new therapeutics in that window between cancer diagnosis and surgery or the initiation of therapy in treatment-naive tumours. Master observational trials incorporate real-world data and, as we heard yesterday, allow for the opportunity to generate really comprehensive data sets, including clinical, social, economic, genomic and molecular data. And they are also very important for the patient population who are not typically enrolled in randomised control trials. And decentralised trials, again, is something that has come up a number of times over the last 2 days. This is really important for us because decentralisation of trials improves access and inclusion for patients that live in a remote or dispersed geographic area, which is exactly the patient population that we are serving here in the West of Ireland region. All of these trial designs take into account that cancer is increasingly being seen as a spectrum of diseases that are defined into subgroups by molecular heterogeneity. They incorporate biomarker discovery, which allows for which maximises our ability to really learn about and interrogate the responses of tumours to different therapeutics. The incorporation of real-world data and the incorporation of high-quality molecular data and the leveraging of technology are really, really exciting prospects. But what's also very exciting is the level of multidisciplinary collaboration and bidirectional translation that these trial designs engender. You can see here, for example, in a window type of trial, there are a whole range of clinician investigators that are key to the effective commencement and delivery of the trial. And this is in terms of identifying patients, recruiting patients, and measuring the clinically relevant parameters of response. But this can't be done effectively without collaboration with basic scientists, data scientists, and translational researchers who can really take the biospecimens, deeply interrogate tumour biology, identify novel or unknown mechanisms of resistance, and then also preclinically evaluate novel biomarkers and novel therapeutic targets, which will feed back into the translational and clinical research piece. Accessibility and inclusion, again, is something that has come up in, I think, nearly every talk over the last couple of days. For us, this means accessibility for a range of diverse research investigators, in addition to accessibility and inclusion for our patients. This is something that's really important in, again, our geographically dispersed region in the west of Ireland. And leveraging technology and incorporating digital health monitoring and telemedicine will be really important in achieving accessibility. But what we want to do is recruit investigators and patients that will build a cancer research program that is really going to deliver on the healthcare needs of our patient population. So a strategic and multifaceted approach to develop an institutional culture of accessibility and inclusion is going to be really important. And this will require investment in staff, training for all stakeholders in the research enterprise, and what's really important is resource allocation and the development of the infrastructure required to undertake clinical trials, not just at the central trials unit, but at all of our clinical sites which are recruiting patients onto studies in the region. Communication, collaboration, and partnership, of course, are also key enablers. And all of this will lead to more innovation, better science, better treatments, and improved patient engagement. If we are to build this diverse clinical trials workforce for the future, we have to focus on education and training now. We have a very active undergraduate cancer society in University of Galway who engage regularly on initiatives with cancer clinicians and with cancer researchers. And there are very effective postgraduate training programs and postgraduate career development opportunities in clinical trials. You can see here the MSc in Clinical Research, which has been led by Prof. Andrew Smith and Dr. Sonia Khan. And as was mentioned earlier, new programs are coming on board, such as the MSc in Applied Clinical Data Analytics, which was developed and led by Conor Judge, who I can see is here in the audience. And Conor is an alumnus of the ICAT program, which has just been funded by the HRB for its second phase, which is now hosted in University of Galway. And this program is training the clinical investigators of the future. It's important that we build a system of training and education, but also a system that supports a career path for the clinical trials workforce. Because when we talk about success and succession, we need to develop a robust clinical trials workforce that will be stable and will be here into the future. And as was mentioned in the last session, we really have an urgent need for ring-fenced funding to facilitate this. We're very lucky in Galway that we do have a talented and dedicated clinical trials workforce in our Advanced Therapies and Cancer Clinical Trials group. And this group are working tirelessly on a number of different projects. There are almost 300 patients enrolled on cancer trials currently in the CRF in Galway here. And as you can see, there's a number of such studies which are actively recruiting across a range of tumour types and across a range of cancer themes. Collaboration and partnership are going to be a critical element of expanding our cancer trials programme. The cancer trials workforce that we have needs to be supported, needs to be expanded, and we need to build on our existing collaborations. These are just a few of the different research networks that we're partnering with. And I want to mention the Irish Research Radiation Oncology Group, who have a clinical trials group here in Galway led by Dr. Joe Martin. Then the establishment of the National Surgical Research Support Centre by RCSI is currently being led by a Galway surgeon, Prof. Stuart Walsh. And they have recently, just last week, given us funding and support to open a breast cancer surgical trial here in Galway. And obviously, as a breast cancer surgeon, that's something that I'm particularly interested in developing. So this is going to be a trial, one of the UBreast Surgical Trialist Association studies, which is investigating de-escalation of auxiliary surgery for breast cancer patients who have had neoadjuvant chemotherapy. There's a very active Sailta Cancer Research Nursing Group who are leading the way in nurse-led cancer trials, and they have established a very productive collaboration with the Research Nursing Group in Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Centre. As was mentioned yesterday and highlighted by Professor Powderly, our collaboration with our basic and translational cancer research colleagues is critical to the progression of clinical research. They have very well established and very productive cancer research networks, as you can see here, both nationally and internationally. And it's important that we keep up our engagement with these groups, because without discovery, we will not have anything to translate to the clinical setting to improve cancer care for our patients. Collaboration with the medical technology sector is something that is going to be a very key component of a cancer trials programme here in Galway going forward. We heard yesterday about the fact that medical technology is a regional and an institutional strength. And we have programmes such as the BioInnovate programme here in the university, on which I'm a mentor, which is producing startup companies that have been really successful in securing funding for commercialization and clinical evaluation of their devices. And a few of the startup companies here that are developing devices for cancer detection, cancer treatment, and the management of the symptoms and side effects from cancer treatment are currently engaging with us on undertaking the early feasibility studies for these devices. And we have a unique opportunity to provide this service for this medical technology sector and also for our patients going forward. And just to highlight the first in human element, Wavelia is a novel microwave imaging approach to detect breast cancer lesions, and they have recently completed a first in human study here in Galway, led by Professor Michael Cairn as the PI, and now are moving on to a larger pivotal study. In terms of emerging priorities for cancer trials, I want to talk about survivorship. It's something that I'm particularly interested in as a breast cancer surgeon. I have the privilege of working with breast cancer patients and of seeing how outcomes have improved significantly over the last number of years as a result of multimodal and targeted therapies. But all of these therapies, or most of them, a lot of them, do have side effects and symptoms and sequelae. So it's really important for us, when we are using a multimodal approach to cancer treatment, that we understand what patients are dealing with in terms of treatment burden and how we can actually help patients to work through this. There are over 12 million cancer survivors in Europe, over 200,000 cancer survivors here in Ireland. And cancer survivorship starts from the time of diagnosis all the way through treatment and for the patients who are living after treatment. And it's been highlighted as an important area of unmet need, both in Ireland and Europe and internationally. The Women's Health Initiative was launched by the Irish Cancer Society with the aim of addressing long-standing gaps in the identification and management of the symptoms and side effects from cancer treatment. And the Irish Cancer Society, together with the National Breast Cancer Research Institute, are supporting us in 2 clinical studies which are evaluating interventions to try and help support patients during and after cancer treatment. So I just want to mention 2 of them. The first is the Linking You to Support and Advice study, or the LYSA study, which was initially commenced in Cork by Profs Roisin Connolly and Josephine Hegarty, and we joined as the second recruiting site last year. And this is evaluating a survivorship clinic as an intervention for women who have just finished treatment for either breast or gynecologic malignancies. And what's really great, I think, about this study is that the intervention is access to support. Some of you will recognise Rebecca here, who's the research nurse working on this project. She was in the video earlier on. And we also have Veronica McSharry, who's our specialist oncologist dietitian working on the programme. And the patients who are randomised to the intervention group of this study get personalised support in symptom management from Rebecca. They also are educated and empowered on how to manage some of the symptoms and side effects associated with their cancer treatment themselves. And they also have personalised dietetic intervention and nutritional support, which is given by Veronica. Now, for the first patients we enrolled on the trial, they're coming towards the end of their surveillance period, and Rebecca has been telling us that the patients in the intervention arm don't want this study to end because they have found this support to be absolutely invaluable in their cancer treatment journey. So what we hope is that the outcomes from this study will provide the data to inform the design and also the resourcing of survivorship clinics for our patient population, because that really is an unmet need in terms of clinical service at the moment. The UCARE study then, understanding cardiac events in breast cancer, is a really multidisciplinary study. It involves a collaboration between myself as a surgical oncologist, medical oncologists, and there's a number of cardiologists also working on this study where we're evaluating the implementation of a dedicated cardio-oncology care pathway for women who are starting multimodal breast cancer treatment that is increasing their risk of cardiotoxic side effects. This has been informed by interaction with a patient panel who have been involved from the very beginning in the design of the study, in helping us develop the protocol, in helping us ensure that the protocol is aligned pragmatically with treatment pathways, and also in developing the patient information leaflet, which we heard yesterday can sometimes be quite a process. What's important here is that we also have a discovery element built into this study, so we are collecting imaging for radiomic assessment. We're also collecting biospecimens for our biomarker discovery program. And in addition, we have smart sensors included to evaluate different physiologic parameters for the patients when they're undergoing chemotherapy. And we're collecting electronic patient-reported outcome measures. So not only are we evaluating the pathway and hoping that we'll provide the evidence to implement this pathway clinically going forward, but with this discovery element, we will hopefully develop a way to better stratify the patients who are at higher risk of developing cardiotoxicity during cancer treatment, so that then we can move towards perhaps implementing preventive strategies for these patients. Our cancer trials programme has to evolve with the evolving landscape of cancer care. And now is a time of great change in this country because we are organising ourselves in cancer centres in a way that's never happened before. 2 cancer centres here have already been accredited by the OECI, and the Aoife University Cancer Network is currently going through the accreditation process. This is going to transform the way that we do cancer clinical trials. It means that we will have to have 10% of our cancer patients enrolled on a cancer clinical trial. This is essential. And it is essential if we are going to be able to provide equal access to international standard cancer care for our patients here in this region. I mentioned patient value at the beginning of my talk, and improving access to trials for patients with cancer is obviously something that's hugely important, and we have a strategy in place to do this. But engagement with our patients and with our community on a regular basis to increase awareness is something that's really, really important. What you can see in this picture is myself, Emer Hennessy, who's the Cancer Research Manager for the Managed Clinical Academic Network in Cancer, and also Veronica McInerney, who is the Programme Manager for the Cancer Trials Programme, with a group of women from a local community in Clarenbridge who came into the CRF to see what we're doing, to learn about the research, and also to give us some of the insights to the issues that they face in their daily lives, some of them being patients who have been through cancer, and others being carers, and others just being part of a community. So we have to include patient-relevant outcome measures. Our patient advisory panel must advise not just on individual studies, but on the whole strategy for the trials programme to ensure that we are doing patient-relevant research. And it was really exciting to hear at the Cancer Trials Ireland retreat last week a new first, which was the introduction of the first patient-led clinical trial going through Cancer Trials Ireland. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the cancer patients who are participating in our trials, not for their own benefit, but for the benefit of future cancer patients. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge this. So as I said at the beginning of the talk, a future-facing cancer trials programme must deliver on operational efficiency, scientific and clinical impact, and above all, have value to our patients. I believe that what we are building here is a cancer trials programme that will be regionally relevant, and through implementing our research findings to clinical practice will be internationally impactful, but above all, will deliver on what is the most important measure of success, which is improved patient outcomes for the patients in our region and beyond. Thank you.
Much appreciated. Now we're going to move to look at accelerating preclinical research, and we're going to do that with the Professor of Systems Biomedicine at University of Galway. Will you please welcome Professor Ines Thiele.
All right, thank you very much. While I'm waiting that the slides come up, this will be a little bit a shift of theme, if you want. And I guess I've been listening to the suggestion earlier on to have Tim cloning Peter to make him maybe not redundant, but have a safety net. While what we're trying to do in the laboratory is to create a virtual clone of a person. And of course, that's tricky and involves so many aspects and so on. And so we decided to focus on metabolism as a starting point. Metabolism is very important. It is a driving force for so many things that are happening with our body on the daily basis. So I think it's a valid starting point. And so the relevance here is really that once we would have a digital metabolic twin, that we actually could use that twin for testing unimodal or multimodal drugs in silico on a patient, on an individual, a priori before giving it to the individual. We could use it to design in silico the best cohort group of individuals to go forward for a clinical trial, thereby improving the outcome of clinical trials. And then, of course, with the ultimate goal of maybe even thinking of clinical trials with n=1. So that's ambition. So how do we reach that ambition? To break it down a little bit, I do believe we need a computational representation of human metabolism, and I will tell you about what we've done beforehand, over the last decade, really, on that perspective. These clinical models have to be sex-specific. It needs to be that female metabolism, female features are properly represented, and they have been underrepresented both in clinical trials, but also on the computational side. So it is really important for that. Now, a digital twin of human metabolism is a generic representation of what's happening in the human body in terms of metabolism. So you want it to be personalizable. You want it to make it specific to myself or Peter or Tim or anybody, and specific to the particular stage of life they're in. And I will show you how we can achieve that. And it should be reusable. It should not be a medical twin or metabolic twin for cancer patients only, or only for neurodegenerative diseases, but it should be generally applicable for different health and disease states. And then it should be, of course, predictive. So we should allow us to kind of at one point predict what would happen to this personalized digital twin if I were to give an intervention, if a change of health would occur, and how can we readjust that to become healthier. And then it is very important to have this for clinical trial design, as I mentioned beforehand, for testing in silico therapeutic designs and interventions, but also for the early diagnosis of various diseases. And we're particularly interested in neurodegenerative diseases, gastrointestinal diseases, inherited metabolic diseases. So that's our focus area, but not limited to that, of course. So what have we done over the last decade, or rather the community, to achieve a computational model of human metabolism? So the systems biology community has generated a very complex, comprehensive map, if you want, a computational model of human metabolism. In its kind of pure form, if you want, the latest version ranged between 30 to 20,000 reactions, biochemical transformation that we know occur in a human cell or in the human body. And we've developed now from there on a very comprehensive, anatomically organ-resolved map and computational model of a human. And so that's our first step really towards a digital twin. And just as a diagram here really, it's to show you that we have the different key organs in there, and we have the metabolism that is occurring in these key organs. The information that we took is from literature, from the human genome, from metabolomic, transcriptomic, proteomic data, and really put that all together. Ask the question, well, when we do that, can we get actually a computational model that is representative of what we know happens in the human body? I won't show you the data, but the answer is yes, as far as we test it. It's self-consistent. But it is also a vehicle for doing now further on the ambition that I showed you and mentioned at the beginning. So when we first put together these whole body models of human metabolism, or first versions of digital twins, we had to come up with names. They're parameterized on a reference man and a reference woman, so we have both genders, and they're ageless. And we called him Harvey for William Harvey. And then the obvious choice is she's called Havetta. There are actually people, I believe 3 to 5 in the world that are called Havetta, so it is a real name. And we're capturing 28 organs for him and 30 organs or cell types for her, sex-specific, of course, and we have 13 different biofluids. And again, here's a schema of how we interconnect these different organs. So it's basically organ-specific metabolism that is occurring. Now we are at the 80,000 reaction mark. They're non-unique reactions, but they're really organ-specific. So now we can start thinking about, well, if I give, what happens with crosstalk between the different organs? What happens to the liver and the brain axis? And actually, I will show you in a second, we have the gut in there as well. So we really can start thinking about the diet, gut, liver, brain axis, if you wish to. Or you can choose another of your pet organs here and investigate how these different components on the level of metabolism collaborate, and how you could do interventions. Now, I mentioned that it's personalizable. So while we have here the reference man and the reference woman, and the parameters are given here, we can actually change these different parameters. We can adjust age, we can adjust weight, we can adjust the heart rate, and you see the different categories. So those ones are clinical parameters often taken in clinical practice that can be adapted. We can incorporate metabolomic data, biochemical measurements, and make the Harvey and Havetta suddenly person, or basically adapted to myself. And I will show you in a second where we can do that. But also we can actually include to some extent the genetics. not on the gene variant resolution yet, but on the gene variant or on the gene level. So if we know that somebody has an enzyme deficiency, as you have often with inherited metabolic diseases, we can actually simulate that. What would be the consequence? Which biomarker would you expect to see? And we can reproduce successfully known biomarkers, but we can predict novels as well. We can incorporate dietary information. So we could actually grab the lunch that's there or what you put on your plate and simulate how your metabolism could change. Would it go to the hips, or should you be running more? Or, you know, what is happening to your liver fatty acid metabolism? We can, and we have worked very hard over the last few years, incorporate genomic data. So we can personalize the whole body models based on metagenomic measurements. And I will show you how impactful that is. And I do believe that microbes, as you will agree with me, play an incredibly important part in the interaction between diet and genetics. And finally, we can incorporate metabolomics data. On our path towards a virtual twin, we're right now, by definition, at a virtual shadow of a patient actually with colonic Crohn's disease. And we're working with this particular patient very tightly together. So it's patient involvement really here. And that silico patient is called Lowery. And here we're working and have submitted for publication the first 7 time points. And we have a computational representation using his biochemical data, but also his metagenomic data of 7 different time points. And we can actually follow the evolution of the disease within this particular patient over time. And what we can importantly discover, and keep in mind everything we're doing is mechanism-based, what we can do here is now asking for questions, well, what is happening during the flare, during remission, and what can we learn from that? And we found, or better, Ariana found, that dissolvable bidra actually plays a crucial role during the flares and alters liver sulfur metabolism. So that could be an entrance point both on a nutritional treatment level, but also drug targeting for this particular patient on how to alter and improve his health state. My time is up, but I hope you bear with me for another minute or so to give you the vision on where we're going from here on. So with Larry, we're working together on his next time points, and overall he collected samples, over 500 metagenomic samples over a time span of 10 years. This is a unique opportunity and data set, but it also shows you that it is incredibly important to follow individuals over time, and I believe clinical trials, as mentioned today and so on, are incredibly important for doing that, following the patients over time. Now, once you have a clinical digital twin, we can now do in silico treatment testing, unimodal and multimodal, based on nutrition or based on drug targeting. And we're currently working on developing kind of a framework on capturing known drug metabolism so that we can overlay that with the metabolism that we capture already and start understanding what both microbes as well as hosts is doing to certain drugs and what the drugs are doing to us, and help us to simulate in silico drug treatment testing. Of course, there's always validation in this facility. An institute will be incredibly important for that. And you can use that for stratification based on mechanism, based on metabolic pathways, to take a set of virtual representations of patients, look what do they have in common in terms of metabolic pathways that might be deranged, like I showed you for Lowery, where the sulfur metabolism is deranged in the liver, and help to do a stratification based on that, and may select subgroups that go forward for particular drug trials. Of course, those works always need validation, including additional cohorts, but also the opportunity for clinical trial design. So what I showed you so far is that we are getting there, that we have a comprehensive model of human metabolism that is sex-specific, personalizable on many different levels, both omics data as well as clinical data, that can be reused for numerous diseases. And here you have to believe me, I only showed you the Crohn's disease case, and we are working towards enabling in silico clinical trials and testing of therapeutic intervention. With that, I'd like to thank you for listening, an incredible team here at the University of Galway and collaborators. Actually, we got funded recently, the project RECOM for IMD. It's a EU funding for inherited metabolic diseases to also create digital representations and use that for accelerating diagnosis for patients with inherited metabolic diseases, and then the funding agencies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So for our final speaker for the morning, to round us out, we are going to be joined by the program manager for the HRB, I should say, of course, and we're going to be talking about leading trial methodology, given that they are the program manager for the Trials Methodology Research Network. So please welcome Dr. Sandra Galvin. Over to you, Sandra.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Anton, for that. As he mentioned, my name is Sandra Galvin, and I'm the National Programme Manager for the HRB Trials Methodology Research Network. As my colleague, Dr. Teresa Maguire, mentioned yesterday, this is a network that has been funded by the HRB since late 2014. And it's led out of the University of Galway, but it is funded across 5 university research partners here in Ireland, and I'm delighted to talk to you about this afternoon. Before I delve into trials methodology, I just want to offer my sincere congratulations to my colleagues, to Peter, to Martina and to Martin, not just on a fantastic 2-day event here, which has been really inspiring, and we're really pleased to be a part of the journey, but also on the launch of the Institute itself, and the ideas and the inception that's coming from that has really been fantastic to be a part of that journey, so thank you. So I'm very conscious that I stand between you and lunch, so I'm going to cut to the chase and try not to talk too long. What I'm going to cover this afternoon is the core of our network, and that is around trials methodology. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we need it, although I think I'm talking to the converted here today. Talk a bit about what our network is and how some of the successes and how we operate. And then lastly, aligning that with the vision and the strategy for the Institute for Clinical Trials here at the University of Galway. Over the last number of days, you will be struck by many of the speakers talking about the inadequacies and indeed sometimes failures in the way we do clinical trials. And when we speak about the quality of clinical trials, I always think about our colleague from the University of Aberdeen, Professor Sean Treweek, and he divides up trials into 3 very unfortunate categories: the good, the bad, and the ugly. So how do we make improvements here? Well, the answer is through trials methodology research. If you're starting off in a career in clinical trials or indeed medical research, and if you were a student on day 1 and somebody said, name the first paper I should probably read, you might direct them towards the infamous paper now by the late, great Doug Altman. And this was published in the BMJ in 1994. And the title was The Scandal of Poor Medical Research. And this includes, of course, clinical trials. From this, we have a now famous excerpt, which is: we need less research, we need better research, and we need research done for the right reasons. I'd love to say that lots has changed since then, but even as recent as 2018, colleagues of ours, Professor Paul Glasgow and Sir Ian Chalmers, recently looked at this again and found that the scandal continues. The continuing ethical, scientific and economic deficiencies of medical research, which includes trials, remain scandalous. So what is it that we can do to change this narrative? So we're all here today because we have a really invested interest in using robust medical-based evidence evidence-based methodologies when it comes to answering clinical research questions. What might surprise you is that sometimes we don't take the same evidence-based approach in generating evidence to underpin methodological questions. So we have a huge lack in the evidence that underpins how we do trials. And lots of this has been touched upon over the last 2 days, and I was nodding in agreement with most of the speakers when they outlined some of this. So some of this includes, for instance, at the very start when you're planning and prioritising research questions. Who was it prioritised by? Was the patient voice part of that when this was being discussed around the table? Selecting outcome measures. There can be many trials answering similar research questions, but they all use different outcome measures. And of course, the pitfall here is that we can't merge or combine these outcomes, and we can't create a greater body of evidence to feed into an evidence synthesis or a meta-analysis. So, and many of the speakers spoke about multiple small trials instead of doing one larger trial and cohesively having a cohesion around the outcomes that are being measured. Same too, we heard a lot about the various downfalls for adequate recruitment and retention methods. How are we recruiting patients? And if we find something, are we actually testing that? Are we exploring the advantages to these new methods, and are we sharing them? Same too with analysing data. Are we using innovative ways around exploring and analysing the data that comes out of randomised trials? I was struck yesterday when Professor Powderly mentioned that sometimes it can take up to 17 years from when the evidence is generated from a clinical trial before it comes into clinical practice. And one of the key areas that we like to focus on also is dissemination of findings from trials to make sure that it gets into practice in a more speedy fashion. So as I mentioned, I'm the National Programme Manager for the HRB Trials Methodology Research Network, and I'm delighted to say I've been with the network since its inception in late 2014. And I like to think that our story so far of our network is really one of impact and success. The ethos around our network is simple. Trials in which the network is involved will be more usable in every sense of the word. Better planned and designed, better conducted and reported, but also more usable for decision makers. And this is because we see every trial as being an opportunity to embed methodological research to make that trial better, but also to go on to make every subsequent trial better. I'm very conscious that we stand on the shoulder of giants, and you couldn't do this work without amazing national partners. This is our current Executive Management Committee that I just wanted to mention here today. I'm very mindful, though, that we have had fantastic contribution from long-standing members previously sitting on our Management Committee. And in particular, I just want to acknowledge Professor Andrew Smith from the University of Galway, who has been with us for a long time, and also Professor Martina Hennessy from Trinity College Dublin, who has served in this committee as well, along with others. He hates being singled out or shouted out to, but Professor Declan Devane is our overall PI and Scientific Director of the network. And as you can see, we're very pleased to have a long-standing relationship with Professor Peter Dorn, who continues to be involved in the Executive Management Committee today. I can't go into details about everyone on here, but I will make a particular shout out to Professor Derek Stewart, who travelled from the UK to be with us for this launch. He's in the audience somewhere, I can't quite see him, but he is our PPI contributor and strategist, and we're very grateful to Derek for his contribution and for joining us for the launch here today as well. So I mentioned that we feel our network is one of impact, outcomes, success. And there's lots of ways that we can measure and look at this, but just briefly, we've welcomed over 30,000 attendees to our training to date. We have worked with over 100 principal investigators who are applying to the HRB Definitive Intervention and Feasibility Award scheme, working with them to embed methodological research within their definitive intervention or feasibility award. And just as I was sitting in the audience, I see the HRB have released the press release announcing the successful DIFA awards, and we're delighted to be a part of that press release embedding the methodological work there also. We work as a funder, so we obtain our funding through the HRB, but we then redistribute it in over €320,000 in small seed grants and competitive funding. And this is to really engage with as many people as possible and build capacity in the area of trials methodology research. So if you're interested, take a look at our website to learn more. The bit that makes us smile, I think, about our network is that we also work every year and we engage with primary school children in increasing awareness about the importance of randomised controlled trial within the community, and we have a lot of fun in doing so. And we have supported over 40 undergraduate summer scholars, again in the area of trials methodology nationally. There's lots of projects I could have picked from the TMRN over the years, both big and small, that will really showcase the type of work that we're involved in. But I welcome you all to go and see our website for a full listing. But wherever possible, we always like to showcase and put forward the wonderful and bright future that exists for trials methodology in Ireland, and that's through our fantastic cohort of PhD students. This is the current grouping. I'm just going to highlight our University of Galway-based students for the purposes of today. And we have Joanna Pope, who's looking at vulnerability to misinformation in the Irish healthcare setting. We have Parastu Nilufar, who recently joined us from Iran, and she's looking at translational statistics and clinical trials. We have Simone Lepage, who's looking at the kids trial, and we have Monchi Li, who joins us from China and who's looking at informed health choices in the area of cancer. When I read through the Institute strategy, I was struck immediately by the harmonious and the incredible synergies that exist between the goals of the TMRN and that within the Institute here in the University of Galway. And we really look forward to working with the team locally and helping provide a gateway to our international expertise in driving that vision forward. We're the only non-UK based member of the MRC-funded Trials Methodology Research Partnership in the UK. So we look forward to harnessing that capacity and making the strengths even greater for all of the work that is a part of this ambitious strategy here in the University of Galway. There were some key points I just wanted to pull out that really rung true for us. In the area of innovating and creating the trials of the future, we all know, and it was covered again in the talks over the last number of days, the pandemic taught us a lot, and it certainly changed the landscape of how we do trials. Those countries that had the infrastructure in place were able to be agile, turn on a dime, join trials such as Discovery and REMAP-CAP. That's where we want to help the Institute be part of that creative future going forward. Developing fast, efficient and impactful trials is really cutting to the core of what we are about. I was greatly interested to listen over the last number of days to various areas in which novel trial design, and Aoife touched on that just before me, on novel ways in which study design can be created here in the University of Galway. Areas such as decentralised trials, N-of-1 trials, hybrid designs, the use of AI in trial recruitment, a lot of areas that the TMRN would love to get involved with and support here in the University of Galway. Inclusion and the EDI agenda is core to everything we do, both as an organisation, but also embedding it within the research that we do and within the trials that are part of the network. And we're very proud to have worked with our colleagues in TrialForge in the UK to draft the Include framework, which is an inclusion framework that you can visit and access through our website, but looks at ethnicity in trials. And we heard from our colleague yesterday, Professor Saeed Ibrahim, about the pitfalls and really where that, when we don't have adequate inclusion in trials, the problems that can arise. And lastly, within our network, we're very keen to grow and develop the trial community of the future, not just to ensure sustainable trials, but to ensure sustainable activity, that we're developing the future leaders in the trial space and also in the area of trials methodology. And last but not least, as I see time is up, I just want to invite you all to continue this conversation with us. And this year, our next Trials Methodology Symposium is being led by the University of Galway with Declan and Peter and colleagues. It will be held on the 20th of October. And we're continuing on the theme that has been emerged from here today, and that's the partnership in trials methodology, working together for stronger science. And I invite you all to have a look at the programme, which will be available on our website shortly. I thank you all for your time here this afternoon, and I am available for the afternoon if anyone has any questions. Thanks.
Lovely timing as well. All right, folks, thank you to Sandra, and a big thank you to all of our speakers and contributors across the morning. We're going to be reconvening here at 2 o'clock for the launch of the Diabetes Collaborative Clinical Trials Network. In the meantime, there's food outside, so I hope you enjoy it and get a chance to get some sun, and we'll see you at 2.